Smile. Welcome to Stuck, Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff, and I want startups to be wildly successful. This is one of my favorite kind of interviews because we're talking to an investor, and you startups need to know what investors want. To Stuck, Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff, and I want startups to be wildly successful. This is one of my favorite kind of interviews because we're okay, trying to figure out how not to get double stuff from YouTube. Okay, start again. Welcome to Stuck, Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff, and I want startups to be wildly successful. Today, we're going to be talking to an investor. Yay, because startups need to know what investors actually want. So we are so happy to have Randy Berholtz from Mesa Verde Venture Partners. For coming, Randy.
Well, thank you, Mary. Appreciate it.
That's great. So what got you into investing?
I didn't want to miss the boat, and I started working for companies myself. I'm a lawyer by training, but I'm an MBA, and went over from being a lawyer to being a VP Biz Dev and VP Corp Dev, and then I thought I could do it better, so I went out and I was the CEO of a company, built it up, sold it off. And now instead of having to go through just individual company by company, you know we we raised a couple of funds, and now I can invest in a broad range of companies in the life sciences.
Sounds good. So it sounds like life sciences is your jam, right?
Yeah, yeah, I do clean tech too, but so through our fund, Mesa Verde Venture Partners, we're an early stage life sciences venture fund in San Diego. We typically invest in the U.S. We're typically the first VC in, and our typical check size is 500 to $1 million, with another million held in reserve. But like a lot of people, I invest outside of here. I like what I like. You know I want to hopefully see the diamonds in the rough before they even get mined. You know what I mean? I'm always looking at the
Okay.
future here, and I'm looking 20 years out. So.
So let's talk to startups. What do they have to have prepared before they talk to you?
Sure. The first thing is, it's interesting because in the old days I would have said just a deck, not confidential deck, or a one-page executive summary, just talking about your invention and your technology and the product. But today, because we're getting a lot of companies coming through, expect more from them. And to be honest with you, when I see a company now, I don't want them to come to me and say, "Oh, here's a technology. What can I do with it?" I'd like them to to really specify a problem that needs to be solved and how they solve the problem. But I also want them to go a next step further. I want them to tell me how are they going to exit, who is going to buy them, who's their competition. So I think it's important.
So those kinds of things are really important. Are there particular things that biotech startups need to pay attention to?
Yeah, you know. One of the things which is I think is important in the biotech industry is because if you think biotech makes the inventions either therapeutics or diagnostics or the like for pharma. And if you think they're making products to improve people's health. So a big thing about it that I think they should understand right up front is, will somebody pay for this? Either an insurance company or a direct pay or the like. So if somebody's not going to buy what you like, then then you probably shouldn't make it.
Right. Are you more interested in therapeutics or diagnostics at this point, or does it not matter?
We're pretty broad-based. Therapeutics, diagnostics, medical devices, healthcare, ways to improve healthcare services and the like. Any way that really improves healthcare. And I'm specifically interested as I'm getting older, I'm interested in longevity. I'm interested in products and technologies that can improve a person's health span.
Okay, sounds interesting. Are there particular mistakes that you may have seen in the past that people should avoid?
Yes, couple mistakes. One big mistake is to, is to have to work with scientists who just care about the science and don't, I would say this. If you want to be a scientist and just care about the science, stay in academia. If you want to come over to our field, and that's, really, uh, translating science into products, into healthcare products, then talk to us. But if you're a scientist who just is interested in basic science, and there's nothing wrong with that, then stick in academia, research centers, and focus on getting your government grants. But if you want to translate that into products, then give me a call.
Okay. Any other particular advice, or do you have a
Yeah,
good
yeah,
story of a biotech company?
yeah. The truth is, it comes down to it. Great science doesn't always win, and that's just the truth. It takes a team to translate the science, into products and to commercialize the technology. And unfortunately, we've spent a lot of time on science, which is you have to focus on the basic science. And there's years and years of science that goes into, proving principles. But I wish there was as much emphasis placed on the commercialization process. Some scientists think, oh, I'm just going to bring on a commercialization guy and they're going to know what to do. Commercialization is hard. It's dealing with a lot of prima donnas. I hate to say it, but they're prima donna scientists, prima donna doctors, prima donna academic research institutes who think they own everything. And it's really working with a lot of different types of people. And if you're not a people person, don't go into this field. Because this is, a life science company has so many different people that are important. You have your chemist, your biochemist, you have your biologist, you've got your geneticists, you've got your proteomics people, you've got your engineers, you've got your marketing, you've got your sales people, you have your regulatory people, you have your clinical trial people. There are so many people that you need to and bring into a company. So honestly, the best people that I've seen who can actually do these companies effectively are those who have been in the military, or people who have been on sports teams. Because on a sports team, you understand your role. The worst people are those who are scientists who say, my science. Well, frankly, it's not ever your science because you're working at an academic institute. A lot of times you're getting money from a government agency like the NIH, and that's the people's money and the people's science. So the truth about it is, if you're my oriented, this is not the game for you. It truly does take a village to get a product to market, and it takes so many years. I mean, the average time to get a drug to market is, I think, 12 years or so. And so it takes a long process. And not everybody's good at the whole thing. I mean, there are preclinical people, then there are clinical trial people, and then there's sort of sales and marketing people. There are different people at every stage of the process.
I would also expect that a startup would need to have accountants and lawyers who are
Oh
familiar
yeah.
with biotech.
Oh, that's right. And it's a whole different language. And, it's a whole different language. And then you have, biotech is really an international sport. Really. I mean, in today's world, if, for example, if Australia has a tax incentive for clinical trials, people are going to go there. If they can take those clinical trial results and then, put them before the FDA or the European equivalent of the FDA. You know.
Have the shakeups in the FDA impacted investing, do you think?
Well, the thing that this industry needs is certainty. I think all industries need certainty. I do think the FDA is shaking it up, and I do think some shaking up is good because sometimes we need to shake up what we've done before. Uh, you know, the thing that I think is going to hurt us years down the line is even a 6-month delay or 9-month delay in SBIRs or STTRs. That's going to hurt people. That's going to hurt science. So I wish the political parties would get their act together and work together here, but it just seems like that's not where we're going anymore. It seems like we're more on a
Needs
dichotomy
a
with
little
that.
more science and a little less politics, right?
Well, politics is politics, but we need a lot more government and a lot less politics,
Hmm.
and But if you imagine what a regulator goes through, a regulator goes through a situation where there's pressure to get medical technologies to solve medical problems. And then on the other hand, there's the pressure to make sure that they get products in the market that are safe. So that's the whole dichotomy here. And, I think with AI, I think we're going to get there. I think we're going to get there. But again, it's faster, cheaper, was a faster, cheaper, more effective. I mean, that's where we're going.
Great. Thank you so much, Randy Berholtz from Mesa Verde Venture Partners. We'll put contact information for Randy in the comments so you can get more. And when you've got a biotech company that's really together, then call them. And
All right,
I'm
everybody.
Mary.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mary. All the
Yeah,
best
and
now.
I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff. I want startups to be wildly successful. And one of the best things you can do to accomplish that is book a call with me at businessriff.com. And join us again next time for Stuck, Time to Improv.